The readings for Sunday, August 20th. The Matins Gospel reading is from the book of John, chapter 21, verses 14 through 25. This is now the third time Jesus showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him a second time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him a third time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he had said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Most assuredly, I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish." This he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, "Follow me." Then Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following, who also had leaned on his breast at the supper, and said, "Lord, who is the one who betrays you?" Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, "But Lord, what about this man?" Jesus said to him, "If I will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me." Then this saying went out among the brethren that this disciple would not die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he would not die, but, "If I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you?" This is the disciple who testifies of these things, and wrote these things, and we know that his testimony is true. And there are also many other things that Jesus did, which if they were written one by one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. Amen. All right. And that, of course, is the conclusion to the book of Matthew. I'd say we're getting pretty familiar with this reading by now. If you've been following along for any amount of time, this is definitely a go-to that we come back to a lot. Nevertheless, it might be your first time hearing it, so let's hit some footnotes from the Orthodox Study Bible. And for verses 15 through 17, that Christ singles out Simon Peter has a twofold significance. Number one, Peter was the leader among the disciples, and thus had to be the first to confess his love for the risen Lord. Number two, Peter had denied Christ 3 times, as noted in chapter 18, verse 17, and chapters 25 through 27. And here, Christ restores him with a threefold confession of love. It is important to note that the first 2 times Christ inquires of Peter, "Do you love me?" he uses a form of the word agape, which denotes the highest form of sacrificial and self-emptying love. The kind of love that God has for man, and that man can develop only through maturing in God's grace. Each time, however, Peter is unable to claim such a lofty love. When Peter answers, "You know that I love you," he uses the term philo, which is the lesser form of love, akin to brotherly affection. When the Lord asks the third time, "Do you love me?" he has changed to the term philo, condescending to Peter's weakness and accepting whatever love Peter is able to offer. Nevertheless, Christ knows that Peter will develop agape love for him, as Peter will eventually accept martyrdom for his sake, as noted in verses 18 and 19. Peter was grieved both that the Lord had to condescend to his level of love, and that this was a clear, though gentle, reference to his 3 denials. For verses 18 and 19, This is Christ's second prophecy of Peter's martyrdom. See chapter 13, verse 36, which Peter would suffer under Nero in about AD 67 by being crucified upside down. For verses 20 through 23, this disciple is John, the author of this gospel. John lived a long life, dying at about the age of 100, sometime in circa AD 98 to 108. Early Christians marveled at his longevity, and some thought he would not die before the return of Christ. John corrects this assumption by clarifying that Jesus did not say to him that he would not die. Yeah, if you didn't know, he was the only one of the 12 apostles that was not martyred. All of them faced a martyr's death, which shows the ends of that they were willing to go to spread the gospel. And even John himself, yeah, he might have lived a ripe old age, but it wasn't a pleasant life. He was exiled to Patmos Island, where he wrote Revelation. He was definitely persecuted, as much as the other 11, I think it's safe to say. But he's just happens to be the only one who died of natural causes. Such was the fervor of, all the apostles in spreading the gospel. For verse 24, John's use of we indicates he had an assistant. Tradition holds John used a scribe named Procurius who wrote down his words and teachings. This scribe is shown in many icons. And for verse 25, acknowledging his gospel contains only a fraction of Christ's life, John has written his book to bring his hearers to faith, as noted in chapter 20, verse 31. While the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke contain many more miracles and parables, these two are far from exhaustive. This verse not only emphasizes the holiness of what was written, but also points to the ongoing oral tradition within the church. See 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 15. The epistle reading is from St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 9, verses 2 through 12. If I am not an apostle to others, yet doubtless I am to you, for you are the seal of my apostleship in the Lord. My defense to those who examine me is this: do we have no right to eat and drink? Do we have no right to take along a believing wife, as do also the other apostles, the brothers of the Lord, and Cephas? Or is it only Barnabas and I who have no right to refrain from working? Whoever goes to war at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard and does not eat of its fruit? Or who tends a flock and does not drink of the milk of that flock? Do I say these things as a mere man, or does not the law say the same also? For it is written in the law of Moses, you shall not muzzle an ox while it treads out the grain. Is it oxen God is concerned about, or does he say it altogether for our sakes? For our sakes, no doubt. This is written, that he who plows should plow in hope, and he who threshes in hope should be partaker of his hope. If we have sown spiritual things for you, is it a great thing if we reap your material things? If others are partakers of this right over you, are we not even more? Nevertheless, we have not used this right, but endure all things lest we hinder the gospel of Christ. All right, some footnotes from the Orthodox Study Bible. Looks like just one for verse 11. Clergy must be given material support to be free to sow spiritual things. God saw this under the old. I'm not sure that sentence makes sense. God saw to this under the old covenant. Okay. As noted in verses 8 and 9. And Paul implies that most Christian pastors are similarly supported, as noted in verses 5 and 6. The liturgical gospel reading is from the book of Matthew, chapter 12, verses 23 through 35. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was not able to pay, his master commanded that he be sold, with his wife and children, and all that he had, and that payment be made. The servant therefore fell down before him, saying, Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you all. Then the master of this servant was moved with compassion, released him, and forgave him the debt. But that servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii, and he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, Pay me what you owe me. So his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will pay you all. And he would not, but went and threw him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what he had done, they were very grieved, and came and told their master all that had been done. Then his master, after he had called him, said to him, You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you? And his master was angry, and delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due to him. So my heavenly Father also will do to you if each of you, from his heart, does not forgive his brother his trespasses. All right, important lesson here. Let's hit some footnotes from the Orthodox Study Bible. For verses 21 through 35, so a couple of verses earlier than where we started reading today, just FYI. It says 70 times 7 is symbolic of an unlimited amount. This parable illustrates the need for unlimited forgiveness. 10,000 talents in verse 24 is an impossible sum, more than a laborer could earn in several lifetimes. 100 denarii in verse 28 is a significant amount from an earthly perspective, about 3 months' wages, yet it is pittance when compared to the debt owed to the king. God not only stays the punishment we deserve, but he forgives us the entire debt as well, as noted in verse 27. Because God forgives us, we in turn are required to grant the gift of forgiveness to others. And then for verse 25, certain fathers give a spiritual interpretation to the punishment described here. The man represents the soul, the wife represents the body, and the children represent a person's deeds. Thus, the body and the deeds are given over to slavery, that is, to Satan, so that the soul might possibly be saved. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 5. All right. Well, that is it, everybody. Hope you all have a blessed day, blessed Lord's Day. Whether you found yourself in liturgy this morning or not, or on your way, I don't know, whatever the case may be when you're listening. But either way, hope you enjoy the close of your weekend. Feel free to come back in here tomorrow for Monday's readings. But regardless, I would just ask that you please include me, a sinner, in your daily prayers. Thank you very much. Take care.